Finally! After a week of this. Ugh.
Twinkle bell, twinkle bell,
What the heck?
twinkle all the way.
So, after a week of doing arc-tempered Kulve Taroth missions for work and literally losing sleep over it, I finally got the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis. Naturally, Monster Hunter World also decided to give me a second one 3 hunts later because, you know, it's Monster Hunter. And then a third one, which I ended up selling out of frustration because I wanted to get something else. But hey, I still love you, Monster Hunter. Even when you give me 7 copies of that rare 8 Elemental Greatsword that I'll likely never use, while denying me the Taroth Assault Glutton heavy bowgun that I've been eyeing ever since the first ever Kulve Taroth event came out on consoles way back. Is that like, what, April 2018? You know, I'd be content even with an Elder Melder type system that lets you trade a certain number of Rarity 8 Kulve Taroth weapons for another random Rarity 8 Kulve Taroth weapon, for example. Of course, knowing my luck, I'll just end up getting one of the weapons I traded over if they ever make a system like that. Never underestimate the god of RNG known as the Desire Sensor. Ah yes, the Desire Sensor. Messing with Monster Hunter players since 2004. Good thing I've never really wanted a Taroth Assault Glutton, like, ever. Such an overrated weapon that I wish I would never, ever get. Ever. Let's see if that works. Hey, work for my Kjarr Blitz Thunder. Anyway, back to the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis. One thing I find amusing about it is how they just go straight to the point with the name. I mean, nothing fancy like Taroth Assault Horn, or even Kjarr Fellsword Magma. Nope, just Kjarr, Glaive, and then Paralysis. It's like Ferrari naming their latest masterpiece the Ferrari Car Red, or the Ferrari Car Vroom. Now, spoiler alert, I love this insect glaive. Is it the best paralysis weapon in the game? Well, I'm always cautious about making such claims when you've got the even faster hitting weapon class known as dual blades lying around. But it's arguably the best paralysis glaive in the game to date, and that's coming from someone who absolutely loved the heck out of the Taroth Glaive Paralysis. This Kjarr is definitely one of the top tier paralysis weapons in the game, especially when paired with a paralysis bug. So like the Taroth Glaive Paralysis before it, one of the reasons I like the Kjarr is its relatively high raw attack for a status weapon. I mean, just look at its raw attack. And I'll be using the base in-game raw instead of true raw here. I mean, 13% less base raw than the Tyrannus, with a 40% affinity difference, isn't bad at all. And that's not counting the 10% or so damage boost from its white sharpness, which bumps your effective base raw value to, what, like 682? Which is exactly similar to the Gruntstorm, not counting the extra damage from Gruntstorm's 210 dragon attack versus monsters that are weak to dragon, of course. In short, you really don't have to feel like you're gimping your damage in order to use this weapon. Now let's look at how it compares with the other paralysis glaives. So as you can see in this comparison, the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis has a lot of nice things going for it. It's tied with the Taroth Glaive Paralysis for the highest attack, granted there's not that many paralysis glaives. Paralysis attack is lower than the Taroth at 210 versus 300, however the Kjarr does not require free element to unlock its paralysis like the other two glaives. This means you can fit in more skills, including those that help raise your damage. It also has 10% affinity while the other two glaives don't, allowing you to more easily put together a critical build. It comes with about 20 points of white sharpness as well, which raises your base attack power by about 10% or so. 10 to 12%, give or take. Lastly, it comes with critical status included, which allows you to inflict more status damage, in this case paralysis, every time you land a critical hit. This also means that you no longer have to equip 3 pieces of Zora Magdaros armor in order to get the skill, giving you greater flexibility with your builds. Now, in making my build for this weapon, I decided to focus on getting my affinity up to 100%. This basically lets me kill 2 birds with 1 stone by raising my damage while taking full advantage of the critical status skill. So the 2 best ways to do that nowadays is either going the Behemoth Drachen armor route, or the Teostra Kaiser Gamma option, via Arc-Tempered Teostra. Both of those give nice amounts of affinity and critical boost, plus the awesome Master's Touch set bonus. Either is quite viable, but the Teostra is a bit more flexible, since it only requires 3 pieces to get Master's Touch, while the Dragon set requires 4. Anyway, let's start with the Teostra Gamma based mix set. First, I decided to use the Kaiser Gamma head, arms, and legs. I use these 3 pieces because they let you max out your critical eye skill, whereas the other 2 parts pretty much focus on latent power. Critical eye level 7 basically gives you 30% always on affinity, and by always on, I mean it doesn't have some prerequisite condition, like having full stamina or requiring you to hit a weak point, for example. As I mentioned earlier, using 3 pieces of Teostra armor also activates the Teostra technique effect, which gives us Master's Touch. This prevents sharpness loss when landing critical hits, which synergizes really well with our critical focus build. So to repeat in case you didn't know, Master's Touch prevents sharpness loss when landing critical hits. In short, Master's Touch allows you to retain the natural white sharpness of the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis more easily without worrying about sharpening as often. Next is Weakness Exploit, which boosts your affinity every time you hit a monster's weak spot. Max it out to level 3 and you get a massive 50% affinity boost, which gets us to 90% when combined with Critical Eye 7 and the Kjarr Glaive's 10% affinity. So to get Weakness Exploit, I just went ahead and used 3 Tenderizer jewels. Now, if you got a Hero Streamstone Shaft and augment the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis for affinity, you'll get a 10% affinity boost, which gets you to 100% affinity. However, I only have 1 left of those, and Kulve Taroth weapons so far have been non-upgradable, so I'm saving it in case I need it for a weapon that can be upgraded to G rank in the future. As such, I decided to just slot in 1 level of Maximum Might, which is the next easy way to get 10% affinity. Granted, it won't work when doing aerial attacks, which is something the glaive is known for. If you stay mostly grounded though, which is when the insect glaive does its highest damage anyway, and only go for aerial for gap closing, repositioning, or the occasional timely mount, then Maximum Might should be active most of the time, getting you to 100% and allowing you to crit every time you hit a weak spot with Weakness Exploit. Even if you still prefer helicoptering around with your glaive, well, 90% affinity is still excellent. Next up, I wanted to fit in Critical Boost, which doesn't affect status attack but increases your raw critical damage. Now I feel that this skill unfairly gets a bad rap after people misunderstood its initial description and thought it raised critical attack damage much more than it actually did, like by 40% extra instead of 15% extra. For example, landing a critical hit increases your damage by 25%. Critical Boost raises that damage by 5 percentage points for each level, meaning 5% for level 1, 10% for level 2, and 15% for level 3. This means at level 3, your critical attacks now do 40% more damage total for an increase of 15 percentage points from the base 25% critical damage. Now, while 15% extra damage for crits is not as high as the 40% extra damage that some folks initially thought, that 15% extra damage you get from max critical boost is nothing to scoff at. For example, using attack boost 4 is common in many sets, especially since it's the minimum required to get that bonus 5% affinity from the skill. That gives you plus 12 attack power, according to the description, which for the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis ultimately translated to a raw attack increase of about 5.5%, so that's barely better than Critical Boost 1. Now, I'm not saying attack boost is bad. Depending on the weapon you're using, its raw values, and its affinity or lack thereof, there will be times when attack boost is the better choice. All I'm saying is that critical boost ain't bad either, especially when you're running a 100% affinity build. I mean, this might be a bit oversimplified, but a straight up 15% increase on the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis raw attack, for example, puts it at 713. I'm not sure if that's intended, but that's the exact raw attack numbers for the Tyrannus Glaive 2, which has the highest raw among all insect glaives. Heck, folks love non-elemental boost, which I absolutely love as well, and that's, I believe, a 10% straight up boost, so you can say it's equal to critical boost level 2. In short, I like critical boost in my critical builds. So to get critical boost, I decided to use the Kulve Taroth Chest Beta and the Xeno Waist Gamma. Each not only comes with 1 level of critical boost, but also a couple of jewel slots for squeezing in other skills. To max out critical boost to level 3, I slotted in a critical jewel as well. For my charm slot, I equipped an Immobilize Charm III, which gives me the max skill for paralysis attack. Believe it or not, I'm 750 hours into the game, and I think I only have 1 paralysis attack jewel. Anyway, this is an easy way to get paralysis attack 3, in case you're missing jewels just like me. After all that, by this point, you will have Critical Eye 7, which is maxed out, Critical Boost 3, which is maxed out, Weakness Exploit 3, which is maxed out, 1 level of Maximum Might, 2 levels of Stun Resistance, and then of course critical status from the weapon. The good news is that you still have 1 level 3 slot and 3 level 1 slots free to add in other skills of your choosing. In my case, I went ahead and put in 1 Handicraft jewel. The Kjarr Glaive Paralysis comes with 20 points, or hits, of natural white sharpness, I believe, so 1 level of Handicraft brings that total up to 30, giving you a bit more leeway for keeping white sharpness in case you miss those weak spots and don't crit while attacking. Otherwise, feel free to slot in something else like Airborne or some other skill that you like. Since the armor set gives you level 2 of stun resistance, I decided to put in one Steadfast jewel to max that out and prevent me from getting dizzy. For the remaining 2 level 1 slots, I just put a couple of Vitality jewels for added survivability, but you can surely put what you want in there, like maybe 2 attack jewels if you have them. Yeah, so here's my Teostra Gamma based Kjarr Glaive Paralysis 100% Affinity mix set. I like it because it's pretty easy to put together and doesn't require an inordinate amount of hard jewels to find. On the downside, it makes you look like someone who can't decide whether they want to be a medieval clown or a Las Vegas showgirl.
Whoa!
At least if you're using a female character, like I am. I mean, honestly, I really can't find a way to make Teostra-based mix sets, particularly those legs, look like they belong to a respectable human being. So I just decided to use a layered armored mix with mostly diver clothes, topped with a brigade hat. One nice plus is that the lightning pattern on the diver looks like paralysis bolts. I also changed the color of the lightning bolt pattern to white gold to match the glaive. Another plus that I just realized is that using the brigade hat makes you look more like one of M. Bison's dolls from Street Fighter. Like Cammy. Cannon Spike! For the Dragon set, I just used the good old tried and true mix set that features the Dragonking Eyepatch Alpha for the head to easily get 2 points of weakness exploit, and then stacked up critical and attack skills with Dragon pieces for the remaining 4 parts. There's a reason why this combination is really popular, because it's a well-rounded set that can be repurposed for various uses. I then put in 1 expert jewel to get max critical I7, 1 critical jewel to max critical boost to level 3, 1 Tenderizer jewel to get max weakness exploit, and 1 maximum might jewel to get that last 10% affinity I need to have 100% affinity. Since my attack was already at 3, I went ahead and put 1 attack jewel in to get that free 5% affinity. Admittedly, this is a bit overboard when hitting weak points on the ground with maximum might 1 active, but it gets you to 95% affinity when using stamina consuming aerial attacks. And just like the previous set, I also added 1 Handicraft jewel. So your full complement of skills would now include critical status, critical I7, critical boost 3, weakness exploit 3, paralysis attack 3, attack boost 4, maximum might 1, power prolonger 1, and handicraft 1. While you don't have as much survivability as the Art-Tempered Teostra Gamma mix, you do get an attack power boost of about 5.5% with this Drachen build. Another plus is that you also don't look like a bleeding idiot. In fact, you can even customize the color to match the white gold of the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis, making it look even more fabulous, as opposed to being put together by someone who just rolled out of bed drunk from a Renaissance festival. Also keep in mind that you can match or get pretty close to the attack for this build, even with the Teostra set from earlier, if you take out those sets' quality of life gems and replace them with attack jewels. For equips, I like to bring the Temporal Mantle, which lets you attack constantly to build up paralysis on a monster. The other is the Apothecary Mantle, which is particularly great for melee weapons. See, from my understanding, while Gunner status ammo builds status with every shot, status melee weapons only have a 33% chance of applying status damage with each hit. The Apothecary Mantle allows your status melee weapons to inflict status damage 100% of the time, so it's really good for this set. Anyway, there you go, 2 easy builds for the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis to get you to 100% affinity. I've tested these 2 sets a lot and they work really well, whether it's solo or even online. Like for solo, depending on the monster, you should at least get 3 or 4 paralysis procs before they die. It just depends on how much HP they have. And then for online, it depends on whether you start the mission yourself or you join a mission in progress. Like if you join a mission in progress, sometimes I get 2 before the monster dies because the monster is pretty much close to death. Sometimes I get 3, even 4. And that works for multi-monster hunts as well. I did one with a Tempered Anjanath, Tempered Diablos, and a regular Baroth. And I was able to paralyze the Anjanath 4 times, the Diablos 4 times, and then the Baroth twice, because its HP was just too low. Yeah, so these sets work really well, and I've enjoyed my time using them, and look forward to using them even more. So, what build do you guys use for the Kjarr Glaive Paralysis? As always, feel free to leave any thoughts or questions you may have in the comment section. Once again, this is Tabiasobi, and thank you for watching. My gosh, I never get anything I want. It's a Taroth glutton! Oh my gosh, how many months has it been? Oh, yep, I actually got it. And the funny part is, I almost sold it, because I didn't realize it was the glutton until I double checked it.